When it comes to communication accommodation theory, it's a little bit out of date when it comes to our society today. Here I'm going to reconstruct the theory to help it fit in our daily lives. First, let's start with what it is. Communication accommodation theory is the theory that states when people interact with other people, their speech and the way they speak, along with their gestures, will adjust to fit in with the other person. For example, a middle school teacher might say some slang language that her students are using to get their attention or to help her make her lesson more interesting and engaging for her students. She adapts to who her audience are and how they speak. This theory can be tracked back to Howard Giles' Ancient Mobility Model of 1973. Howard Giles, the author of Context of Accommodation, believes that communication accommodation theory can uniquely attend to 5 different options and situations. They are social consequences, which include behavioral, attitude, and communicative, and macro societal factors, intergroup situations, discursive practices in naturalistic settings. And lastly, individual lifespan and group language shifts. Therefore, as we can see, the theory has a wide range of different situations and options. Giles believes that in communication accommodation theory, that speech convergence reflects the speakers and the group's need for that social integration with one another. The group wants to feel like they are all on the same page and are thinking and acting similar with the same thought process about certain things and goals. Hans Ladegaard states that human communication is rational and logical. The speaker and the audience have a common purpose or goal. This is how the interaction of communication accommodation theory succeeds. Ladegaard explains that teacher-student communication deals with this theory a lot. A teacher must adapt to what the students want to obtain by their communication with the teacher. The teacher must also adapt her language and gestures that will be on the same level as the students. This allows the students and teachers to be all on the same level and the same purpose and goals during this communication. The student also adapts to the teacher's goals on learning a new skill or her purpose on helping them understand this new goal. When everyone is on the same page, Ladegaard explains that this is when communication will succeed. David D. Bowler, the author of Effects of Speech Rate Similarity of Compliance, Application of Communication Accommodation Theory, believes that when a speaker seeks compliance with a request for help from the listener rather than pursuing attitude change through the listener, the similarities of the speaker's rate relative to the listener's rate improves compliance because it makes the speaker more social attractive. Although strangers must go to a greater level to providing more elaborate requests like apologies, explanations, and inducements to secure compliances than friends do, it's still very possible that strangers can achieve compliance. So what have changed? Teachers are unable to connect and be on the same level as their students like they were able to in the past. In 2012, for example, Aaron Lesver from Mindshift wrote that all computing devices from laptops to tablets to smartphones and dismantling the knowledge of silos and are therefore transforming the role of a teacher into something that is more as a facilitator or a coach. A quote that is going viral right now is, "I ask teachers all the time, if you can Google it, why teach it?" Communication accommodation theory is when the speaker adapts to their audience to fit in better and to be on the same level. The example that I used earlier was that the middle school teacher might say some slang language that her students are using to get their attention to help make their lesson more interesting and engaging for her students. She adapts to who her audience is and how they speak. But how can a teacher fit in with her students when they are glued to their technology and everything that they need to learn or know is just a click away on their smartphones? Michael Goddesy, the author of The Destruction of K-12 Teachers from the Atlantic paper, states that the relative recent emergence of the internet and the ever-increasing ease of access to the web has unmistakably usurped the teacher from the former role of dictator of subject content. Blending learning is which students take at least part of their class online while supervising by adults is now offered by 70% of K-12 public school districts. According to Clayton Christensen Institute, claims that the number of K-12 students who took an online class increasing from roughly 45,000 in 2000 to more than 3 million in 2009. The Institute projects that half of the high school classes will be delivered online by 2019. This example of teacher-student relation is occurring because of the widespread growth of social media and technology in young people today. More and more adults and teens are texting instead of calling and sending emails instead of meeting up with people face-to-face. Emily Drago from the journal The Effect of Technology on Face-to-Face Communication explains that over the past few decades, technology usage has grown significantly. In the U.S., 76% of households reported having a computer in 2011, compared to only 8% in 1984. Of that number, 72% of household reports accessing the internet, up from just 18% in 1998. As of 2013, 90% of American adults had cell phones of some kind. And for the people under the age of 44, the number was closer to 97. The drastic increase in technology usage is especially noticeable in younger generations. One study conducted by the Kaiser Family Foundation found people ages 8 to 18 spend more time on media than on any other activity, at an average of 7.5 hours a day. So why doesn't this theory work anymore? So then we ask ourselves, how can someone adapt to their audience when face-to-face communication is dropping by the year? The communication accommodation theory states that a person changes their range of voice and gestures to adapt to their audience to fit in and move more smoothly. However, how does a person use the communication accommodation theory when they are sending emails to people they are trying to persuade or fit in with? Does one change how much they say to someone when they are communicating with them online or through text messages or emails? Or do they use certain jokes or punctuations to try to fit in with their target audience? Like I stated earlier from credible sources, teachers use the communication accommodation theory frequently in their day-to-day teachings because they want to grab their students' attention and engage them in their teaching so they adapt to their students. However, this theory was before the internet started growing rapidly. The generation of students now have been around the internet either their whole lives or were introduced to it at a young age. Because of this, teachers are not able to adapt to their students as easily because they can learn what the teacher is teaching them on the internet. So when a teacher uses the communication accommodation theory and changes her way of talking and gestures, it is not engaging the student like it did in the past. The theory does not talk about how to adapt to a conversation or group of people through computers or online conversations because it was before any of that technology took off. The structure of the theory is missing communication that is not face-to-face. When a speaker is trying to speak to their audience about a certain topic, common goal, or important information, they are not always there to communicate with your audience face-to-face. The speaker still needs to be able to adapt and look approachable to their audience so they can engage the interest and have a better chance of them listening and considering the information that is being given to them. Even before the internet and telephones, people wrote letters for all types of different reasons. If a person wanted to give another person some information or talk about a common goal of the process to reach that goal and wasn't near that person, they would write them a letter. But how can a person adapt to that person over a few written words on a piece of paper? This theory needs to be updated so that it can also work for these types of communications, just not face-to-face interactions. When a college student is sending emails or text messages to their boss or supervisors, they will use a more of a formal approach. Why is this? Because they are adapting to how these people may talk. A student wouldn't talk to their professor in the same way they would talk to one of their college drinking buddies. Because more and more communication is being done behind a screen and not face-to-face anymore, the communication accommodation theory should be reconstructed to say that a person adapts to their audience by the approach of how they communicate with that person or a group of people to fit in with the level of communication that that person falls into. A more formal text message, email, or message electronically or online would occur when someone is communicating about a more formal topic or goal than a casual conversation between friends and family. People can still adapt to their audience to fit in without having to be face-to-face with that person. This reconstruction of the theory does not leave out the face-to-face communication and how people still adapt to this type of communication, but is now also including the non-face-to-face communication that is growing throughout the years, especially in our younger generations. Therefore, if our younger generations are very in sync with technology, then so will our future adults, companies, businesses, schools, and etc. Reconstructing this theory will update it to match how communication is today and how it will be more and more technology based as these younger generations grow old and become our society's adults.